Chapter 82. That horrible night I suddenly grew old. For me, Christmas is now chillingly cold. I lost my childhood in a devastating way. If only I had made her stay. Christmas was over. It was even New Year 2006, and yet it was still standing there. Diego's Christmas present, wrapped and ready. He had never received it. She had not even met him since she bought it. There had been so much snow and ice that she couldn't go to his place. Besides, she wasn't sure he lived in the barracks during winter. As far as she knew, he didn't have a phone. It felt weird that she hadn't seen him for almost a month. She sat at her desk studying, but had difficulty concentrating. When the doorbell rang, it was nice to have an excuse to get up and do something else. She suspected it was Keivan or possibly Agneta, so she knew she would just end up slamming the door in their faces. To her surprise, it was neither of them. It was Pom-Pom. "Oh, hi. What are you doing here?" "I'm waiting for you to let me in. Hurry up, will you? I'm freezing my balls off." She smiled. Pom-Pom was his usual self. Strangely enough, that felt good. She opened the door, let him into the corridor. My room is the second door on the left. Pom-Pom took off his outerwear and sat down on the chair she had next to the door of her room. She sat down at her desk, waiting for him to say what he had come for. He went straight to the point. "I only came here to ask you to come back to the band. I knew it would all go to hell when you and Keivan got together. You remember that I told you that, don't you?" She nodded. Of course, she remembered that night an eternity ago when she and Keivan had been sitting close to each other on the edge of the stage and Pom-Pom had talked to them. "Look, I get that it feels like shit to be with the band when he's with Agneta. I get that, but can't you just, rise above that? The band needs you." "I heard you had a new singer." "One? Man, if you only knew how many we've tried out." He shook his shaved head with a thin ponytail. "It was like a scene from The Commitment, so that movie with two brothers playing the piano? I don't remember what it's called. The one with Michelle Pfeiffer, I don't remember what it's called either, but I know which film you mean. So I guess you've had some interesting people auditioning." "Man, you should have seen them. Half of them couldn't carry a tune. Then there were 3 that we thought were okay. One girl sang well, but there was something strange about her. We just couldn't figure out what it was. She wore like lots of layers of makeup, and sometimes she talked like a little girl. It took some time for us to figure out that she was just 13 years old. I mean, 13? Most places we play at have an age limit of 20 or older. We asked if she had asked her parents if she could join a band. Of course she hadn't, so she was out. She can pretend to be Amy Diamond somewhere else. Then there was a girl named Holly. She brought this pink music stand and put a sheet music on it. We thought she would just do that at the rehearsals, but then she used it at a gig as well. She was just standing there singing, not moving a millimeter away from the stand, at a real fucking gig. People must have thought they were at a funeral. We threw out the music stand, of course, and got her to put papers on the floor, just like you do when you tape the song list on stage. Oh, that was worse. She looked at the floor the entire fucking gig. After 2 gigs, we got rid of her. Pom-Pom stretched his legs and leaned back in his chair. The third one, Elaine, sang damn well with lots of intensity. She even looked like you do now, black hair and so on, a rock and roll chick. But once, after a gig, we found her in the dressing room, snorting some white fucking powder from a mirror. As you know, we don't do drugs in little bands, so we kicked her out too. He fell silent and shook his head. "Jenny, I know we'll never be rock stars. I've even given up on the dream of a record deal. But you know what I miss?" He looked her straight in the eye. She saw a thin scar running through one of his eyebrows. She had never noticed that before. The performances, the minutes before a gig when we wait to go up on stage, that magical feeling when we perform the songs perfectly, get a good groove and make the whole fucking dance floor move. Or when we get the whole audience to sing along or light lighters. I miss it, Jenny. I really do. And I understand that the only way to get her back is to get you back. He kept his gaze on her, stared straight into her eyes in a way he had not done all these years they had known each other. "So that's why I'm here. To ask you to not let that Keivan and Agneta set situation get to you. Ignore that shit and come back to the band to sing, to perform, because you do that so damn well. I didn't know how well you did it until we had to find someone to replace you. She couldn't help smiling at his out-of-character sincerity. Come back to the band, please. She hadn't missed the band, not at all. Everything in her life had been upside down for so long that it hadn't felt strange that the band had also stopped being a part of her life. But now that Pom Pom talked about the feeling of being on stage, the feeling of being together in the band, the feeling of being able to nail a tone and make lots of people happy and ecstatic, she had forgotten about it. But now that he reminded her, she felt that she had missed it too. Before she could answer, the doorbell rang again. When she got up to open the door, Pom Pom slung his winter jacket over his shoulder and went along with her. Once again, Jenny was surprised when she opened the door. It was not Agneta or Keivan. Outside the door stood a muffled up Diego. Jenny felt a pang of happiness that was immediately blocked by the coldness in his eyes. The look made her stop, confused. What could possibly be wrong? He stood stiff and rigid, and he looked so angry he scared her. Only after a few seconds did she realize that he was not looking at her. The anger was directed at Pom Pom. "Oh, please let me introduce you to each other," she said hurriedly. "Pom Pom, drummer in the band I used to sing in. Diego, the guy who saved Keva's life that night." "Oh, that's awesome. Happy to see you. That was so fucking well done." Pom Pom held out his hand. Diego's coldness disappeared. His posture of features softened, and he took the outstretched hand. Pom Pom shook Diego's hand and put his other hand on top. "Thanks. Gave his friend to everyone in the band. We're really grateful." Diego nodded briefly, but, as usual, said nothing. Pom Pom turned to Jenny. "Think about it, okay? Without you, Lil Band is no more. We won't be looking for another singer. It's you or no one, alright? You still jam on Wednesdays in your garage?" "Yeah, from 7. I hope I'm gonna see you there next Wednesday." He said goodbye before putting his cap on his almost bald head. The small thin ponytail protruded below the edge of the hat. Jenny closed the door after him and turned to Diego. "Hey," she said, "long time no see." He looked around, seemingly lost. He had never been to her place before. "My door is the second one to the left," she explained, and together they entered the room. "How did you get here?" When he took off his thick jacket, she saw that he was wearing his leather suit under it. He threw the jacket on the chair, then grabbed her elbow and led her to the window. Outside, she saw a motorcycle with something that looked like skis on each side of the bike. "You put sleigh runners on it?" "Yeah, studded tires, homemade runners, electrically heated handles, then I can drive all year round." He took off his leather suit. She looked at him and smiled. Of course, he would not let snow and sub-zero temperatures stop him from riding a motorcycle. She picked up the Christmas present that had been lying on her desk for so long and handed it to him. He looked at it in surprise and stammered, "You know I didn't buy anything for you. I didn't know. It's okay. I just happened to find this one and thought you might like it." She suddenly felt embarrassed. Maybe he wouldn't like it at all. Maybe he would just find it ugly and silly. To avoid an awkward moment, she put the present in his backpack. "You can open it when you're home." He still looked uncomfortable and didn't seem to know what to do with himself. "It's not that I didn't want to buy you a Christmas present." She waved with her hand in a never mind gesture, but he continued in an unusually unstable voice. "It's just that I don't buy Christmas presents at all. I don't celebrate Christmas." Jenny was used to Keivan not celebrating Christmas. After all, he and his family were Muslims. But that Diego didn't celebrate it surprised her. When she asked him why he didn't, the pain in his eyes startled her. "My mother died on Christmas Eve." "That's awful." She put her hand on his arm. "How did she die?" He drew in a short breath through his nose. "She kind of drank herself to death. She and my dad drank on Christmas Eve. They often drank, and they always drank a lot. They weren't alcoholics, just, heavy drinkers on weekends. That Christmas Eve they drank a lot. Started arguing and Mum went out. She stumbled and fell into a snowbank." Diego looked out the window without seeing. "I was asleep. I didn't know she had gone out." If I had known, maybe I could have... In any case, I found her on Christmas Day, a few hundred meters from home. She had frozen to death. Jenny gasped and put a hand over her mouth. How old were you? She noticed she was whispering. He continued to look out the window. Absent-mindedly, he put his hand over hers on his arm. His arm was strangely warm. She had somehow expected it to be icy cold. I was 12, old enough to take care of them. But that Christmas Eve, I didn't go up and check on them. I just wanted to sleep. I wanted to pretend everything was fine. I wanted to pretend we were a normal family. Suddenly he stopped looking out the window and stared at her as if he had not seen her before. In any case, I don't celebrate Christmas. He walked towards the door. Then it was as if he realized he was not about to leave, so he just stopped. She looked at the sharp contours of his body when the winter light from the window shone on him. That's why you never drink alcohol, she said slowly. You only drink milk or water, even when your friends bring beer. My dad's an alcoholic. After my mother died, he never stopped drinking. There were no more white days. I have it in my blood. If I start drinking, I'll be lost. I'm not going to die in some fucking snowdrift. She went to him, put her head on his back, her arms around him. He put his hands on her forearms. But if I were to celebrate Christmas, he turned around but made sure her arms stayed around him, then you would be the only one who would get a Christmas present. He bowed his head and kissed her on the nose. I actually wish for a Christmas present that no one can give me better than you, she murmured. He looked at her for a moment, smiled, lifted her up and carried her towards the bed. She was still amazed at how easily he did that. She laughed. Actually, I was thinking about something else, although this is also a good idea. His hand held her buttocks firmly and she had her legs around his hips. Diego stopped, puzzled. What else could he give her, better than anyone else? I only have a driver's license for A1 motorcycles. I've never taken the time or wanted to spend the money on getting a driver's license for heavier motorcycles. But now I know you. Can you teach me on one of your motorcycles? He smiled. By the time we'll be done, you will drive better than the ones passing you, he said, putting her on the bed. Now, I want the Christmas present you first thought of, she said hoarsely, pulling him on top of her.